Hello, everyone, and welcome to a monumentous occasion. It's it. It's the end. It's the season finale of the deep dive. Holy shit, we made it to season one. How did I do this? Why do they keep giving me sponsors? And why am I wearing all this extremely heavy clothing? That's because it's winter. It's the end.
Yeah,
It's the end of December, the end of the year, the end of all the holidays
the
that
end of
everyone's
an era.
exactly. Oh yeah, end of a crazy time. Hopefully, we'll leave all the bad stuff in the past for now. But time is just a concept, so let's not dwell too much on it. And
Time is a fractal spiral and nothing is real.
exactly, and let's delve into something that we know is real, mainly Arcadia and the Fae.
Yeah,
Now,
definitely. They're super real.
they're as real as you believe them to be, and I am joined once again by Jacqueline Bryk, the esteemed changelingaholic, Lord of the Fae of all the
Don't call me
courts.
Lord of the Fae, they'll find me.
Yes. Also, one of the faces that run the safe place, as I like to say. Uh, you know her, you love her. But if you didn't catch last episode, Jax, will you mind just giving everyone a recap of who you are and why they need to care? Not why they should care, why they need to care.
I would love to. I'm Jacqueline Bryk, also known as Jax. I am an award-winning tabletop game designer and freelancer. I also design LARPs. I also do edits. I also do sensitivity reading for a whole bunch of different things. I worked on Changeling the Lost second edition. I've also worked on Vampire the Requiem second edition. I've worked on Deviant the Renegades. I worked on Demon the Descent, which are two very easy names to mix up. I worked on Mage the Ascension 20th anniversary. I worked on Vampire 5th edition. You may have seen my appendix for Considerate Play in the core for Vampire 5th edition. I worked on the edition of Fading Suns that's coming out. I worked on Cult Divinity Lost. I've worked on a whole bunch of stuff, and when I'm super depressed, I go, oh, no one cares about things I write. But the truth is, I've worked on a lot of stuff, and I've worked on most of my dream projects. So now I have to find new dream projects.
That's I mean, and I feel like that's like something that's good, right? You're always pursuing the next dream,
Mm. And
falling
look, I finally got my author copy back from a person I was lending it to. And my name is, I believe, actually the first name under the author section.
oh my god.
Like, having my name in a Changeling the Lost book is fucking incredible. No, I'm second right after Rose Bailey. So that's even better.
It's you know what? A number 2 is still an incredible feat and
It really is.
amazing, really. I think it was funny because I just got my physical copy of Cult like a few days after we did the last deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like reading it and I was looking at the credits and I was like, I know that name. I know
Yep.
that name well, and I was like, "This is awesome." Someone,
I was
you know,
the English editor for Cult. So
hmm
I'm very proud of that.
it's. I was just telling people, like, seeing your, someone that you would call a friend, like, and your friends doing
Oh,
all
I
this
call
great
you a
stuff.
friend too.
Thank you, I appreciate
You're
you.
welcome.
Just like seeing my friends like do all this great stuff. It makes me happy. I share it, especially because Cult was so much fun. I would do another deep dive on that if I could. You know what? I probably will eventually one day around the
You can
road.
ask me. I will tell you all about Cult.
That you know what? I think that's something we should definitely make
Hell
happen.
yeah. Hell yeah.
But we're not here for Cult today.
Oh,
Well, not entirely.
not
I
entirely.
feel like we're always here for Cult someday,
Oh yeah.
days out of the days. But we are here for Changeling. We had what was some would consider a really emotional and kind of really great introspective into what Changeling is and just all the related themes. And I really hope to continue that today
Yeah, definitely.
because it really it is, as we said before, it's a system that's near and dear to your heart as well as near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. It's definitely one of the most intriguing systems I ever played. So if you are just catching this episode now and you haven't seen part one, go ahead and watch this episode. We love the company. You might not understand some things, and then go back and rewatch the first episode because it's really great. It's all great, and you should also go watch the rest of the deep dive. You know, just if I do say so myself, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I should post on Facebook about this because I posted on Twitter all day, but I totally forgot to post on Facebook.
Yeah, I do be like forgetting to update anything other than Twitter.
It do be like that sometimes.
It do be like that sometimes. Just because like Twitter's slowly becoming my life.
Oh yeah.
Every follower is a new bit of dopamine to the system.
Hell yeah. Unfortunately.
It's just it's the god machine tendrils. So, I don't know if you recall, but the topic I wanted to start on when we first jumped in, like I said that we would start on part 2, is the courts.
Yes.
Now, you asked me a question, and I really had to think about it because I wanted to give an honest answer. You asked me about what court you think I would be. And I really had thought about it because at first I was like, I feel like I'm on an autumn court, and then I'm like, or maybe I'm a spring court, but I feel like spring court is kind of like the cop-out answer that a lot of people give, because it just seems the least
excuse you
negative, I guess. But then I realized I'm very much probably a winter court, which is probably what prompted me to put this whole.
Are you saying I'm a cop-out?
I'm not saying no. I'm definitely not saying. I'm not saying one of the creators of Changeling.
Actually, dare you?
I'm
ending this interview right now. No, you're good. Continue.
But just to answer that question that we left hanging up there, I'm a winter court, I feel.
Oh, okay.
So, but interesting about courts, you know, they're described as the coping mechanisms for when the changelings are dealing with the fae, the strong emotions and stage that often come after the abuse. Do you feel that the book does a good way of portraying this kind of like sensitive topic accurately?
Yes. I don't know what to say other than yes, because the 4 courts are in order: denial, anger, bargaining, and depression. And spring is like, well, yes, everything is lovely, and we're going to try and make everything nice for everybody else and ourselves, because the whole point of this is to laugh in the face of the fae, and in the summer, like, we need to fight back against them because they stole things from us. And fall are like, well, if we can show people what the fae are like, then they will know not to go near the fae, and we can prevent this from happening again. And the winter are like, we just lay low long enough, they'll go away. They'll go away, and we don't have to deal with them. And in every sense, each of the courts is right and each of the courts is wrong, and they can't survive without each other. Because if you have a freehold that's all spring all the time, who's going to defend them against huntsmen? If you have a court that's all summer all the time, who's going to mediate any disagreements? If you have a court that's all winter all the time, you don't really have a court.
Yeah, you just have a lot of people locked in.
Or freehold, rather.
Yeah. No, definitely, I can understand that. And I guess like you, what do courts mean to you then?
I mean, how do you mean?
So in dealing with the rest of Changeling, like how important is because I feel like when people make characters for games, sometimes they might look at the courts and say, oh, this is just a stat bonus rolled up into fluff. But I feel like with a lot of things of Changelings, it's almost like the opposite. It's almost like a fluff kind of made up to look like a mechanic, but it's something more for the story. So I guess in your, like, how important are courts to
I think in any game you can look at a splat or a sub-splat and be like, oh, this is just fluff that gives me a stat bonus. You can look at anything and say that.
Yeah.
So, like, even to some people who play Changeling, if that's how they want to play, that's how they're going to play, and I can't really stop them from doing that. I mean, to me, the courts are about finding people who are at the same stage of healing that you are and being able to vibe with that.
So there definitely is like a certain part of like empathy at play almost.
Oh yeah.
And we're changing, kind of learning the empathy. And I want to actually backtrack on my point a little bit. I've been trying to get out of the habit of saying fluff because it has like this kind of negative meaning to it.
So is flavor text.
Yeah, flavor text. There we go. That's perfect. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And then as a GM, how would you recommend that they respectfully represent the various courts at play, especially when they are kind of these like stages of grief?
I mean, be honest about it. That's the best option I can give, I think, in this case, because grieving looks different for everybody. So, like, there's a tendency for people who are playing Spring Court to, like, play sex workers, and I think that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's the court of joy, it's the court of desire, so
Yeah.
clearly everyone is just having sex with everyone in the Spring Court all of the time. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if that's what everybody wants to play out, if people sort of
Mm-hmm.
want to play out this idea of consensual intimacy as a healing mechanic. Like there's actually a couple of kiths that are based on that idea, this idea that being close to people is actually physically and emotionally healing. um and like if everybody's happy with it, that's fine, but also in a lot of the games where you have a GM who thinks that Changeling the Lost is sort of their carte blanche to inflict their, kinks on their
Mm-hmm.
players without consent, that can be a huge problem. So I say it really is based on the chemistry at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like if you have a bunch of people who want to play out the idea of playing a sex worker in the Spring Court, I mean, obviously do your damn research. Um, but like if you can play that respectfully, I mean,
Yeah, go ahead and do it. I definitely can see that point on that. That's a good answer, and I feel like that's an answer that a lot of GMs kind of just like, unfortunately, they kind of forget. Like it's easier. It's weird because when you play a game like this, it almost feels like, you think in your mind it's like it's harder to run because the I guess the topics are more they're more
mhm.
sensitive, they're more to real life than your usual like hack and slash kind of like role playing games or your
Mhm.
total escapism. um but I feel like that, in your words, I feel like that shouldn't be like discouraging to the player. It's almost like a new challenge, and like as you said
Yeah.
before, Changeling can be just ridiculous amounts of unadulterated fun. You just all
Yeah,
have to be
I
on the
mean,
same page.
it's don't think of it as a challenge. Think of it as an invitation to do something different.
Something that your
'Cause-
players probably never seen before.
and this is what I tell people about safety rules a lot, because we were talking about safety rules a lot in the past episode. Is don't think of safety rules as a limitation. Think of safety rules as an invitation to do different things.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really great way to put it.
Mm.
So, kind of moving on from courts, because we kind of set the stage, and now we're going to set the kind of stage for the rest of the Changeling's life. One of my favorite things, contracts. Can you just give everyone a brief rundown of what a contract is?
So everything in the game Changeling the Lost runs under the assumption that the weird is running through your daily life. The weird is sort of this balancing force of whatever you sow, you will reap. Whenever you make an oath, that oath will be kept, etc. And contracts are the Changeling's powers. They're essentially deals that they make with various forces in order to be able to do different things.
Mm-hmm.
So different types of changelings get different types of contracts. I believe, if I remember correctly, this carried over from the first edition.
Mm-hmm.
Like different seemings get different contracts that they're better at.
Yes, I know. Like, I think the courts also, because all the contracts are divided by courts, right? And then there's the goblin contracts.
Uh, I believe no courts. I'm sorry. Contracts are divided by regalia,
Okay, yep.
which are crown, jewels, mirror, shield, steed, and sword. Every seeming has a favored regalia, and the player chooses a second favored regalia for her character. So no, it's not divided. It is divided by seeming to an extent, but then you get to choose
Mm-hmm.
a second favored seeming.
And it's nice because there's definitely
Or a
like
second favored
areas.
regalia, sorry.
And they're like areas of expertise, and I
Mhm.
love how they're all classified. Like, it's I just like the idea of contract because I feel like there is a framework that a lot of Chronicles games stick with. And like one of those ideas is having like a power of some sort, like it is, the changeling's powers.
Right.
But unlike so by basic cost glamour, but like I also feel like, role playing wise, like there is the whole idea of the contract, like you are fulfilling a side of the deal
Yes.
to invoke these powers. And I think that's really cool in terms of like when you compare it to your other kind of Chronicles games or even like other games in general. So it's not simple of I have this resource, I spend it. It's like as a character, I kind of have to think about what I need to do to fulfill that contract later.
Yeah. It's also interesting because the way humans survive long enough in Arcadia to be able to be turned into changelings is by making contracts with the Fae who took them and their domains and things in order to be able to be affected by their domains in certain ways. Like, for example, water will hydrate me here. So the sort of contracts you take say a lot about who you were in Arcadia and also a lot about who you are now.
And that kind of just like briefly jumping off of that point, that kind of gives speculation. Like, how many humans brought into Arcadia don't even survive the initial durance?
I'm so glad you asked. We actually have a kith coming out that's all about dealing with dead changelings.
Oh my god. Because that's something honestly I've never even considered until you kind of hinted at this moment of the idea that like people that are, maybe they're stubborn and they, or they're adamant into not accepting the contracts and eventually
it's not even just that. If you look into, for example, the gristle grinder, the flavor text for the gristle grinder, they cooked and ate people.
Oof.
Like, changelings have done some bad shit to survive. And before we go any further, I want to give the content warning for this stream, because we forgot to give a content warning for this stream. Changeling covers themes of trauma, abuse, abduction, violation, both physical and mental, implied sexual assault, though we don't super go into it. So feelings of being trapped, feelings of being imprisoned, violence, doing bad shit to survive, like all sorts of fun things. So please be aware of that when you're watching the stream, and stop watching the stream if you need to. You know yourself best.
I like that word of advice, because if that's going to tie into something later, a huge topic, but we're not there just yet. I don't want to get too ahead of myself because it's almost like the grand reveal, because it's going to be, I think, the best part of this episode. So yeah, as we going back to contracts, what I really like about them as well is they're described as changing your perceived reality around the changeling as they use them. Like certain parts of them like seem different or they change, which is a huge theme of the game of like what's actually happening versus your changeling's perceived reality. What's like some of the more interesting ways you've seen this GM'd and story told in a game?
So I haven't seen a lot of Changeling 2e games GM'd, which I am sad about, because I feel like I really should have seen more. But having played in a couple of first edition games, I can say that, I mean, a lot of people tend to overlook it because, like, oh, well, you're using this power and the power does the thing, and then so I actually don't have a good answer to that. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's perfectly fine, and maybe that's just so maybe changing up the question is, what would be the tip that you would give a GM when telling them, hey, how to make contracts not simple, I spend a glamour, I do this?
Oh, I would ask them, how does this look as your character does this? Let the player describe it. A, it takes cognitive load off you, and B, a player's gonna come up with something cooler than you could have.
That always seems to be the rule in like every system, is that your players' imaginations are always gonna run more rampant than you could ever dream, which...
Yeah. All you gotta do is feed them the right lines.
Yeah, collaborative storytelling is fucking great.
Right? like, I feel we have this idea in GMing, like, I'm sure you saw the Session Zero discourse that went around Twitter recently.
Oh yeah.
This idea that if you give your players narrative control of anything for longer than an hour, then your game is just not going to happen. Because the players will have run away with it. And that's quite honestly foolish. Oh, we gotta hydrate.
Oh no. Oh my god. I keep forgetting to start. This is like the constant thing that has been through every episode. I always forget to get water before the starts. So I will bank that hydrate until later, until the
I will go. Schlant.
drinking from the holy spring that keeps Jax eternally young. There's another soul.
Do you know my face hasn't changed in like 12 years? I'm 28 and I look almost exactly the same as I did when I was 16. The only difference is I'm more expressive and I seem happier in my environment.
That's a good thing. That's great.
Yeah.
Then.
No, it's great. It's just very weird.
I honestly tell people all the time that if I shave my beard, I go back to looking like I did in high school, which is honestly probably the reason I have a beard.
Probably.
Where does the hat end and my beard begin? Who knows?
Nobody knows. You're a snow skin.
I'm at the.
There you go. The hat is part of you.
It is me. It's me, and I accept it.
There you go.
So making contracts with the True Fae is often like a double-edged sword, as we talked about. But even so, more
Just
so,
a double-edged sword.
double-edged everything. Just like,
yeah.
like a spiked ball that has barbed wire on each tip.
Yeah, basically.
But even more so, the Changeling is striking deals with the place that sold them away. Is now, and you know, I'm full of mind to tell everyone that Jax is able to skip any questions she so desires. Because obviously, talking about Changeling takes us to some personal places. Is this a commentary on bargaining during situations of abuse, just to get like?
It sure is. So much of this. So I tell people, as I mentioned last episode, that Changeling saved my life in a very real way. And part of the way it saved my life is it was one of the first games I'd ever read that A, wasn't D&D, and B, presented this idea of you have to change your behavior in order to be able to survive a situation. This isn't just talking about like domestic abuse. This is also talking about like code switching, but people of color have to do in white spaces. And, you know, trans people who aren't out, you know, having to present as having to present as a gender that they do not identify as, and in order to keep themselves safe. And sometimes you have to make these devil's bargains and they suck, but they keep you alive.
Yeah, and it's funny you brought up code switching. That was actually a really big topic I had to deal with last week. Because a friend brought up to me that I personally like, oh, you code switch a lot, and it just never. And you know, I'm a minority. I was raised in the city in an urban youth, but I also lived in a neighborhood that was predominantly, you know, white space. So I often I realized it's like, yeah, I code switch, because it's like, well, why do you code switch? And the whole idea of like, well, because it like the answer I gave was, well, it makes me more appealing to whoever I'm talking to, and it's like, damn, if that is not the self-defense mechanism of the fucking year, let me tell you. Yeah.
And like, even from my own experience, I mean, I grew up white and cis, and I'm still white and cis. I'm much queerer than I was in my youth. But something that I think a lot of children of emotionally abusive parents can relate to is having to be able to predict your parents' moods in order not to have things suddenly taken away from you.
Yes.
Like if I was getting ready to go to like a camping trip or something with some friends that I paid money for, and I said something my parents didn't like at dinner, all of a sudden I was no longer going on that camping trip. or couldn't use my computer, which was sort of my lifeline,
Mm-hmm.
for days or weeks, or all of a sudden I didn't have this privilege, or I couldn't go to this place, or whatever. And like, that doesn't, to me, that doesn't sound huge because I put up with it for so much of my life. But like, so many people I know have gone through that and been so fucked up by it. And I'm only realizing exactly how much this sense of constant object non-permanence
Mm-hmm.
was for me.
And that makes a lot of sense, and just in general through life. I feel like I want to I guess the term I would use is like micro abuse, like little bits and pieces of abuse that you wouldn't realize.
Yeah.
Like if you request off from a job, generally I've seen in my notion when I request off for vacation from a job, I usually get like the shit work for usually the days leading up to it, and you kind of have to take it because you can't complain. They gave you off and you feel like you complain, there they go. Or just like you said about going on trips or getting computers.
It's death by 1,000 cuts.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call it microaggression because that's a specific. I know you didn't say microaggression, but my ADHD brain was like, oh, that sounds like a microaggression. Like, no, because microaggression is a specific thing relating to systemic abuse, not personal abuse. But it is very similar to a microaggression. I think you're right. It's this idea that this person now has this power over you, and you know it, but you have to sort of give in to what it is they want, because otherwise you're going to lose the thing that you have.
Yeah, Changeling, and that relates back to Changeling, because Changeling is at the end of the day, it's a game of concessions.
And it's the nice thing is it's not just a game of concessions, it's also a game of learning about how getting better at negotiating.
Yeah.
Which I think is super important. Like, for those of you who don't know, my husband has been away for almost 2 months now taking care of his mom. If you're watching, hi Ben and Ellen, you're great. But something that's been really hard for me is I've never lived alone. I've always either lived on a college campus with my parents or with Ben. So being alone in my house causes me to basically turn into an isolated loner. And my social muscles do not get stretched at all. And it's bad. And I noticed recently that like people have started irritating me a lot more than they used to, because people just like teasing, friendly teasing me about stuff gets under my skin really fast. Or people trying to comfort me by going, here's a wholesome thing I'm doing with my partner. We wish you were here. Really upsets me because it feels like they're rubbing it in my face. And I know that's not what they're doing, but over the past 2 months, I had to learn how to say, thank you. I understand why you did this. This is actively not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. Learning to negotiate your boundaries and telling people, hey, I know you did this for a good reason. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at how this made me feel. Please understand that this is how this made me feel, and let's do something else. Especially if you have a disorganized attachment style like I do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, saying that is really hard.
No, and it's understandable, and even the fact of like you feel like you don't want to say anything, or you don't want to appear non-agreeing because you think that changes the view of yourself in that person's eye, and that bounces back on you because we are what others perceive us to be, and in a certain sense, I guess.
Well, if you're talking about Mind and Mask, which changelings have a different face in the human world than they do in the Hedge or in Arcadia, in a very real way, changelings are what people perceive them to be, because they're either mask on or mask off, which is also a really interesting metaphor. I was thinking about this while I was writing it recently. Really interesting metaphor for autistic and people with ADHD, because we have to constantly mask this like weird fucking cognitive schemata that we have going on, this non-holistic cognitive schemata, and like seeing somebody in their natural environment, like somewhere they feel comfortable, is a lot different than seeing them somewhere they're uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
like, of course, there's all these things about the mirror personality or performance personalities, like you're a different person at work than you are at school, than you are at home, than you are with your boyfriend, whatever. And there's a lot of really interesting both cognitive and behavioral theories about this. There's also, you know, the structural dissociation, which is a theory that trauma actually splits you into different personality types. So like if you are triggered by a specific thing, you might slip into your flight personality, which then ties into like polyvagal theory and all these other things. But sort of the idea of Changeling with the mind and the mask is, you know, you have these different people that you appear to be in different situations, and then when you're using contracts, you further appear to be different because you are acting on a promise you made with this specific entity. And like, even in a real world situation where two friends of yours are in an argument and you're trying to mediate, both of those friends are going to see you differently depending on who they think you're closer to. So yeah, I don't remember what the original question was.
No, it's good. We're all about tangents.
Great. So yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about how Changeling, and this is again from somebody who has ADHD and complex post-traumatic stress disorder and a whole bunch of other mental illnesses that are intimately intertwined. Been thinking about how so much of Changeling is being a non-normative human in society. And when I say non-normative, I mean non-white, not cis, not straight, not, neurotypical, etc., etc. Because there's so many things you have to do to mask the self you are comfortable in. And you have to make all these little bargains with all of these powers that be in order to even exist in society.
You could even argue that every contract you make, whether it be in real life or in Changeling, you're kind of giving a little bit of yourself away. And it's like, how many contracts do you make before?
Yeah, and honestly, that's not something to be ashamed of because there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. But it's actually something I wrote in one of the upcoming books, is it doesn't matter what you had to do to survive in Arcadia because you were under powers outside of your control. What matters is that you escaped.
And what you do with that life, which is at the core, that's Changeling. It's what comes after.
Yes.
And
I really wish people would understand that.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. And
it's so good.
And I'm like, there's like a whole section I have, which is like the feel good section we've been waiting for.
I love a feel good section, but I think we should do that after our break.
That's yes. Oh, are you suggesting we take a break right now?
Oh no, I'm suggesting we take a break in 10 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. At 8 o'clock, that sounds great. All right, but before we go in, I'm gonna speed us along then. I want to talk about my favorite stat of this fucking system. Weird. We talked about before how it represents how close the Changelings to their fae and their own makeup, and even the fact that if you get to like Weird 10, you essentially become a true fae to a certain degree.
Unless you are able to bleed off some of that weird, or you have enough people keeping you tethered to the earth.
Exactly, your touchstones. But the higher the weird, it's interesting. The more they can recount their time in the fae.
Yes.
One of my favorite. So one of the things that I know we touched upon this last time, in last episode, but I love how Changeling incorporates dreams, because dreams are, as the weird continues to grow, your dreams get more vivid, and and the dreams is the vehicle that they use to kind of to show you about your durance, like your time in the fae. How important was it for you, and just the team in general, to have that mechanic of dreams, and even like the themes of like body horror to properly show the progression of the weird.
So something I am a huge fan of is in the second edition of the system, we actually developed a system for engaging with dreams, because in the first edition it was kind of fuzzy. Just like the Wild Hunt was kind of fuzzy and not really a character. We actually systematized it here so that you can actually do the thing of interacting with dreams more. And I am thrilled because I love bastions. Bastions are so fucking cool. They are the mind of the dreamer in which the dream is taking place. And if you consider that dreams are sort of the subconscious giving vent to your daily anxieties and joys and fears, you essentially have this fortress of repressed memories or thoughts that have been shoved way down, and you're gathering strength from that. Like if you're harvesting glamour from someone's dreams, you are essentially gathering strength from people's secret feelings, which can be positive or negative depending on the dreamer. And I think for Changeling specifically, the weird going up, meaning that you recall your durance more readily, means that A, your human brain is repressing it less, but B, your mind is able to make a space for that. Your mind is able to accept that this happened. And again, that can be positive or it can be negative.
And it's interesting to say that the more weird your team, you sort of there's another kind of mechanic that's built in frailties, which are kind of like would it be right to say that you're basically inheriting the weakness of your mythos almost?
Almost, yeah. I wouldn't say you're inheriting the weakness of your mythos necessarily, but you are becoming more of one thing. Right, because like we talked last week about how 2 weeks ago, how the Fae are their titles. They are the thing that they are, and humans aren't necessarily the thing that they are, because humans have this ability to be so many different things at once and hold so many different ideas in their head at once. Like cognitive dissonance and doublethink are such a huge part of like American culture right now that like Faye would not be able to fucking comprehend what's going on. They would not get it at all. And like, so yeah, I mean, I do like the wording of inheriting, the flaws of your mythos, but I think it's less about that and more about you're actually just becoming this myth, right? You are buying into the weird and saying, I want to be more powerful as this one self. And in order to become more powerful as this one self, I will also become less powerful as these other selves.
It's like you're just conceptualizing.
Yeah.
More it's so esoteric. I like it's so just abstract, and I think that's a lot of the whimsy and fun of Changeling.
Good. But I have a thing where I get really deep into different stories. Like, I'm sure you've seen me rant about The Purge on Twitter, because The Purge has been one of my hyper focuses recently. I've ranted about the Terminator extensively. And Changeling actually changed from being a hyper focus to being a special interest for me, because I am so attached to it. And in a lot of ways, I have a frailty due to that, because when people see me now, what they think of is Fae. Jax is playing a Fae. That is what Jax is playing. That is what Jax is doing. Jax is not doing other work. Jax is Fae. And now this is great, because it means I get to work on basically any Changeling book I want to. Thank you so much, Megan Fitzgerald, if you're watching this. Thank you for giving me all of the really good stuff to work on, because I'm having so much fun. Please put me on all the Changeling books. Thank you. Somebody clip that, please, so I can show it to Megan.
It'll be done.
Okay. But it's very rare that people think of me outside of Fae now. Unless I explicitly state, this is a thing I am interested in right now. This is a thing that I think has a lot of depth and potential and that I could explore in great detail. Unless I specifically am talking about that, a lot of people don't realize that I engage with things other than Fae in a writing sense.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that maybe Changeling, like just your knowledge on like, so you're saying like it kind of just puts you in a box?
I think if I am not careful, it could put me in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I want to work on all of the Changeling books because I freaking love Changeling. But also I want to work on all of the Cult Divinity Lost books as an editor. Because my two favorite forms of horror are systemic horror and cosmic horror.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if you think about it, they're the same kind of horror. They're just on slightly different perspectives.
Yeah, different terrains.
Yeah, systemic horror tends to be a lot more sci-fi, a lot more cyberpunk, you know? It involves less magic, not no magic, but involves less magic.
Mm-hmm.
And it tends to be about governments and conspiracies and all this other stuff, whereas cosmic horror tends to involve a lot of ritual and contract and a lot less rigidity, except where it does. So I like horror that you have to exist in. I don't like horror that you can defeat. I don't like horror that you know, oh, well, there's a slasher after me. And I don't like torture porn.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody tried to get me to watch the Poughkeepsie tapes recently, which I'm never going to watch. Because they're like, oh yeah, you like horror, it's really rough. And I'm like, it's not the kind of rough I like.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in a superpowered dude who's out to get me, because God knows I've dated enough of those. I'm interested in the system that creates those people. I'm like, sure, a serial killer is absolutely a byproduct of a broken system, but I want to know how the system is broken.
So my last question is not even going to be Changeling related, because you brought up a point, and it's just, honestly, it's a curiosity of mine.
Okay.
So I have movies here. Have you seen 2020's The Invisible Man?
I have not, but I've been told I should.
Okay. I would love to hear your take on that after you watch that, whenever you do get around to watching it.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So I feel like that would be up your alley, but in a sense that it's not. Well, it's not cosmic horror, but it's not systematic horror either, but it definitely is kind of like this idea of...
I mean, it's stalker horror.
Yeah, like...
And also, I love Elizabeth Moss, so good choice.
And it is a lot about dealing with, like, an abusee dealing with their abuser, and I think that's a powerful...
I mean, from what I've seen, it's like somebody being pursued by a huntsman.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
So you could easily get, like, inspiration. Something I do want to talk about after the break is where to find inspiration for your Changeling games, because boy, do I have some suggestions.
All right, then we'll remix up a bit, but I'll go ahead and we're gonna give everyone a 5-minute break, a little bit early on. We might with this, because this episode's probably gonna run a little bit longer than usual, just to finish up the season right. But we'll be back in 5 minutes. We love y'all.
Get your water.
Oh yes, and I will be getting a huge glass of water that I will be banking that redeem that someone.
Good.
See everyone in 5 minutes. Hello everyone, we're back with the deep dive. I have my water, so I'll be drinking.
I'm drinking cooking wine because I hate myself.
I also have a special treat for everyone. You might be wondering what this is.
What is it?
It's the winter festivities, as I like to call it. I love eggnog. I love eggnog so much. And I only get it seasonally. So if here, I don't know if you can see it. There is, I don't want to like spill it over my keyboard, which will happen. It is eggnog with a little bit, I mean a lot, probably a lot of Kahlua.
Nice.
So,
did you know, I only found this out recently, did you know that eggnog and ice cream are the same thing? It's just that ice cream is frozen.
Really?
Yeah, same mixture.
I can just drink ice cream and have eggnog whenever I want.
Yeah.
This is amazing. I've done that. I've made shakes with like eggnog and ice cream. I'm like, oh, this is great together. Not
right?
Just the same thing.
Well, basically what you're, because eggnog doesn't usually have flavoring in it. Unless you're like deliberately putting flavoring in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really sorry that my camera is like focusing and refocusing. It's really irritating me. Justin, who is Static Delaware in the chat, who is a dear friend of mine. Thank you for coming on to watch this, Justin. Says he likes eggnog. Neat. So you've now discovered that you like eggnog. I still don't like eggnog, personally. It's just the texture thing. I can't do it.
It is a very so this eggnog's a little bit different. I had some, so I bought some Southern Comfort, and apparently that's some really high quality eggnog, from what I've heard anywhere. And when you open eggnog, if you leave it for a day or two, it starts to thicken considerably.
Ugh.
Which is like, it's literally like drinking cream. And I was like sitting there going, is this normal? And they're like, yeah, that's the way eggnog should be. And I was like, God damn. This is a little bit...
cooking wine.
Well, as we both get slightly intoxicated
Hell yeah.
each drink, let's dive into the intoxicating world of the Fae.
Nice transition. Very smooth.
Thank you.
Smoother than eggnog.
Everything's smoother than eggnog. Speaking of intoxication, this actually goes really hand in hand with the next question. I'm gonna ask straight up, what the hell is glamour? It's described as a byproduct of emotions, dreams, nightmares, and a little bit of fairy dust sprinkled in.
Mm-hmm. It's emotional resonance. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's the... Like, you know how people are like, yeah, I can pick up on emotions in my environment. Or I can, you know, sense the vibe of a room. That's basically what glamour is. It's the stuff that emotion puts into the air. A changelings feed on. And again, we discussed last episode how Fae really love conflict. Because Fae cannot naturally produce conflict in their environment without the assistance of something that can. Because, sure, a Fae could get in a fight with another Fae, but then they have to agree on how it ends. You know? They know how it ends. With humans and, like, some kinds of hobgoblins and other entities that are not Fae, they don't know how that story ends. So you get sort of like this friction. Actually, a good way of explaining glamour. You know how if you rub a flint and steel together, you get sparks? Mm-hmm. Glamour is sort of the sparks, the friction of the emotional flint and steel of human and Fae, or human and human, or human and hobgoblin, or humans sleeping alone, dealing with their own issues.
Love the goblins.
They're so good.
They're so good, especially the goblin fruit. Okay,
I fucking love goblin fruit. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. Goblin fruit is one of my favorite parts of Changeling, and nobody I have ever encountered has ever played a goblin fruit gardener, and I think that is a huge missed opportunity.
Be like, basically, you have mystical, transformative food for everyone.
Yeah! You have a nice garden in the hedge, and then you specifically cultivate different types of goblin fruit, and you sell it to your freehold. I've never seen anyone play that concept, and I'm very disappointed.
Well, to anyone that's thinking about playing Changeling, it is. Get on it. Because if you don't, then Jack's gonna have to drink that wine for the rest.
Oh God, don't.
I'm not putting that evil on you, never mind.
Don't put that magic on me. Don't put that evil magic on me.
So, we kind of briefly touched on it. So obviously, they describe the process of taking the glamour as the reaping. Should reaping glamour for humans have a moral quandary tied with it? Much like when, like for instance, a vampire taking blood. The changelings are the victims, but are they innocent in this regard?
So here's the fun thing about glamour, is you can take it innocently, or you can take it non-innocently. Much like getting your needs met as a trauma survivor, you can very, very easily... Justin says there will be good spirits in my future, which I appreciate. But you can very easily get your needs met simply by asking, or putting yourself, finding good and healthy situations and placing yourself in those situations. Or you can use the survival mechanisms you learned, which are often toxic, and get your needs met that way. Sometimes you may be forced to bounce in between one and the other. And I think that's really interesting because vampire is about being a predator at its heart, right? It is about being the sort of person who has to harm other people to survive.
Yeah, no matter how much they try to convince themselves otherwise.
Yes, and deviant, and some of them actively cultivate blood dolls and ghouls so they can sort of lessen that. I'm really sorry about my camera changing focus. I don't know why it's doing that. And some of them actively cultivate blood dolls and ghouls to sort of lessen that burden on their conscience. And sure, predators in real life have friends, people who care about them, people they can sort of meet their needs with on a less harmful, though not ever totally harmless basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Deviant the Renegade is about being somebody who is so consumed by the need for vengeance and by the need to establish their place in life after it was taken from them that they destroy everything else in their path. Or if you're playing a devoted, you are playing someone who is so fucking loyal to these people that you will do anything for them. And Changeling actually offers you a choice, because you could start by being somebody who reaps glamour from people that you cause to be in difficult or harmful situations, where that spark will go off repeatedly, and essentially you're manipulating them into, you're essentially creating drama for your own benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we all know people who have done that. Hell, I have been known to do that once in a while.
I'm a Gemini, that's all I'm gonna say.
I have a Scorpio moon.
I used to, funny enough, I used to never kind of give... Oh, just Jax might be down. No, she's good. I used to never really consider that until someone else who was a Gemini. We just started talking about how we reacted to certain things, and I was like, "Holy shit, that's it's the same." So,
yeah, I mean, I enjoy astrology as a fun thing.
Yeah,
I'm not super focused into it, but yes. So where were we? Yes. Again, glamour is emotional resonance, right? So you could very easily reap glamour by causing people to be in situations where they are happy and healthy and giving off, for example, joy or anticipation or something. Or you could take the easy route and force people towards their vices, in which case you get the easy glamour, but now you're leaving a trail of broken and upset people in your wake. And both are totally legitimate means of getting glamour. It's just one has more of a moral consequence than the other.
All right, that's a great answer.
Thanks.
And we're going into what I like to call the penultimate section. So it's a section all on mechanic on itself. It's gonna start out, everyone. It's gonna start out a little sad, but I swear by the end of it, we're gonna be like, "Holy shit, this was a great talk."
Okay, I'm ready.
It's time to talk about clarity.
Hell yeah!
So
I'm not drunk, I swear. I'm just very excited.
And even if you were, no one would be able to judge you, because I have also been drinking a little bit. So.
Oh, I'm a lightweight.
I've been drinking a lot of it. This is like half Kahlua. It's just so good. Eggnog already has an alcoholic taste to it, I feel. But a Changeling's clarity, at the base, I was able to kind of summarize it. If I was like, all right, I'm gonna summarize in one sentence. It's almost like their defense against everything the true Fae and Arcadia will throw at them. It's a heavy concept we're gonna be diving into. It can be argued that I feel like it's the #1 mechanic of this game, and it also kind of feels like it's the most that's implemented from real life scenarios.
I love how we did clarity in this game. I'm in love with it. I am heavily biased, granted, but I love it so much, because something we did with the second edition of the Chronicles of Darkness is integrity is your base human stat, sort of like your 10 commandments almost, because it's from 0 to 10. But then every other supernatural has their own version of integrity that they follow, and that tells you so much about them, to the point, if I remember correctly, deviants don't even have the equivalent of an integrity stat.
No, well,
they have their touchstones.
Yes.
That's about it. They don't have a virtue or vice either.
Just all anger.
They are just rage machines. And that tells you so much about that game. Clarity with changelings is not how good of an abuse survivor they are. It's not about how kind they are to others. It's not about, you know, are they a good person or a bad person? It's about how connected they are to the world around them. And this ties into so many things. So fucking many things I've been saying about trauma for years now. Like, one of my least favorite books on trauma is Pete Walker's Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. If you're not familiar with it, that's fine. It is the book that introduced the fawn response into the 3 F's of trauma, which are fight, flight, and freeze. The fawn response is this hypothetical 4th trauma state that he proposes, and some other therapists think that fawn is actually behavioral or learned response as opposed to an autonomic nervous response. But Pete Walker poses the fawn response, the sort of, oh, I need to make everything right in my environment, as this 4th ingrained trauma response that people have. And like, I'm sure he did that because he saw it in himself. He talks a lot about how he is a fawn response. But he also uses it to bludgeon people whose other responses are fight, flight, and freeze, because clearly no other response is as morally good as fawning. Because the fight response, oh god, no, that means you're a narcissist, and narcissists are bad. The flight response, especially when combined with the fight response, means you're a borderline, and borderlines are bad. And like, does this whole thing about how there are morally evil mental illnesses, but you the trauma survivor, you are not morally evil because you are not one of the bad mentally ills. The changeling looks at that and goes, no, all of us are traumatized, all of us have issues. The question is, how connected are you? How grounded are you in the real world in order to not let your trauma run away with you?
I really like, yeah, that's
Hold
an
on
awesome.
1 second, I need to plug my computer in. Keep talking.
Okay, no worries. That's an awesome definition. And clarity is just this huge basket of eggs we're going to be on that. I don't even know why I chose that analogy. That's just the first thing that came to mind. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's not.
Clarity is my favorite basket of eggs. I like thinking of them as duck eggs because I like duck eggs. They're
like
delicious.
Ducks. Yes,
I love ducks. Ducks are great. Ducks are terrible, but ducks are great.
Ducks are great to eat.
You know, it's not great. Drinking cooking wine.
That wine.
Don't do this.
Oh god. Problem is, I can't drink a lot of it. No one should drink a lot of eggnog at once. It just never ends well for the stomach. But
no.
Ooh, most alcohol's at the bottom. Ooh.
Woo.
All right. So we're diving more into clarity. So I want to talk about. We're going to start with the bad. I want to talk about
the bad.
I'm going to talk about low clarity. So low clarity, you know, they say it gives way to hallucinations, dreamlike states, and even to the point of suggesting that you can accidentally drift in and out of the hedge mentally. How does a GM properly showcase the changeling essentially being I'm just going to reiterate the content warning as we're about to talk about some not so safer things. The Changeling is essentially being gaslit at low clarity and a slave to their own perception. And how does a GM do that tastefully and not in the vein of like you were talking about with that with these more exploitive GMs?
And you leave it in the hands of the player. If you don't want to be an exploitative GM and you're worried about a sensitive topic, say, all right, well, your clarity is this at this point. What do you see that causes you to shrink back in fear? Or makes you want to, gives you this taste of blood in your mouth? And you let them express their character's low clarity. Because at the end of the day, telling a character you feel mentally ill is never going to work out well for anyone. Make use of the conditions, make use of what your player thinks the state is like, because nobody knows your player's character better than your player.
Because often the player will set what they're most comfortable with.
And
if they are more comfortable than your average player, then you as the GM can get to that point of like super description. Yeah, honestly, that's why you have to consent form people, and that's why safety is number one. We recently had that in our Cult game, because I said I had our last Cult game, I had a really intense scene, like honestly probably the most intense scene I've ever had in an RPG. And I remember sitting down Mark and our GM Mark Marchosius, if you're watching this, and I hope you are, you did amazing at that Cult game.
I hope you're watching this, Mark.
Hope you're watching. You should be watching this, you motherfucker.
You should be watching this. Should be watching me drink terrible wine and talk about Changeling.
And that's the only way to talk about Changeling, is by drinking terrible wine. And you know what they say, when the wine runs dry, the conversation is over. So as long as we talk, we will keep drinking.
Okay.
Just kidding. You can do whatever you want, Jack.
Okay. I was worried. Don't tell me contracts like that, because then I'm gonna try and do it.
Oh God.
Don't make me do that. Okay, so side note, this is a uranium glass teacup, and you can't actually see it glowing as much as I want you to, but uranium glass is actually a beta emitter. It is less radioactive than a banana, but it does, when you put it under a black light, it glows green, because there's uranium in the glass, and it stopped being made in the 1930s because all of the uranium in the US was added to the National Strategic Stockpile. But you can find uranium glass at most antique stores worth their salt, and I'm starting a uranium glass collection, and that is the only thing that is making this terrible wine tolerable.
Is the cool ass glass it comes in.
Right?
I'm down with that. So, what? Oh my God, I forget the transition to the point we were about to make, but... So what does it mean for the Changeling to not only face, because we talk about there's breaking points, right? The breaking points that lower your clarity, and then there's kind of nestled across, your adventures as a Changeling. What does it mean for Changeling to not only face their breaking point, but either move past it successfully and stand strong, or what it means for them to fail horribly and begin to spiral into that self-doubt?
So this is, again, something I like to talk about in regards with real life trauma, because this is very easily a one-to-one correlation with emotional activation, or as many people know it, triggering, right? Because so many things can set you off and send you, I think we talked about trauma time travel in the past episode, where we talked about, flashbacks and anxiety and all of this other stuff. And just this idea that something reminds you of part of your Durance in Arcadia, or someone doesn't believe you. And that's something I actually really want to talk about with regards to clarity, because that's my favorite breaking point in clarity. But this idea that your world is not what you thought it was. Or you thought you escaped and now you feel trapped again. Or any number of other, sudden feelings of deception and fear. That's a huge deal, right? Because it determines how you're going to be after that situation. It's very, very easy, as somebody who has been emotionally activated repeatedly, how you interact within that activation. And like for me, when I'm triggered or activated, like I get this high-pitched squealing in my head. Like I can't physically hear it, but I feel it. You know? Does that make sense?
No, it does. Yeah,
Like
I'm listening intently.
Yeah, like you get this very, for me, I get this very like high-pitched machine noise in my head, and I feel like I'm strapped to a table and I want to run but I can't, and I'm shaking and breathing shallowly. And it's very easy for me to lash out at people during that phase, because out of the three, my responses are fight and freeze.
You were mentioning that last time we were talking about, specifically the freeze part. So
yeah, because I feel stuck, right? Because if I stay still long enough, it'll go away, but it's still there. And like, it's very, very, very easy in that state to do something that you regret, or do something that you wouldn't otherwise normally do, or maybe something looks like a threat but it isn't, or something doesn't look like a threat but it really is. And all of these things can be tied into Changeling, because the idea is trauma makes you see things that aren't there. Even if you're not physically seeing them, emotional flashbacks are enough to do serious damage to your relationships with other people, especially if those people are also traumatized and take you being emotionally activated as a knowing and intentional attack upon them. There is an excellent piece by Kai Chang Tom called "Why Are Queer People So Mean to Each Other?" And the thesis of the piece is essentially a lot of queer people, especially in primarily queer spaces, have been heavily traumatized by their upbringing and the world around them. And so we react to any form of disagreement or conflict as a threat of annihilation, because in a society that wants us dead or non-existent, it very often is. So we haven't actually been taught conflict skills, right? And part of Changeling, with clarity and, you know, being grounded and learning how to perceive what's in your environment, is learning how to engage with what is in front of you and not what your trauma says is in front of you. Now, having too much clarity and not enough weird means that you're not able to imagine future possibilities. You are currently stuck in what's going on now, and that's also a problem, because trauma gives us this ability to imagine possibilities that weren't there had we not had that trauma. And I hate saying that, because people are like, your trauma's a gift, and like, no, my trauma's fucked up and I hate it, but also it is part of me,
and you're gonna make the best of it.
Yeah, you have to accept that it is part of you. You can't just wish it away, right? Like, you have to accept that happened to you, and you're not helpless because of it, but you're also not the person you would be without it.
Oh man, it's tough not to just jump ahead, because we are gonna call back to all of this, and I think that's great. That's what great conversations are like. All right, so in an instance of getting time, I think that was an excellent description of clarity, and we're gonna touch back on it too as we kind of go through. If it's okay, if you feel like it's too much, you could slow down on the
No, it's the wine. You're good.
No. I mean, that's what I'm saying. If you want to slow down the cooking wine, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
You don't need to drink in regards to me. Because I'm like 3 times your size, so it's gonna take a lot for me to divulge into anything. Okay, so I want to talk about something that kind of deals with clarity, and just people often don't consider this, and it's kind of like this gray area. I want to talk about fetches.
Fetches, let's fucking go.
Yeah, so the So for anyone that doesn't know what a fetch is, so the Fae kind of figuratively, and maybe even quite literally, depending on the storyteller, are ripping a part of your soul out and using it as kind of a clone of your original self in order to keep your old life what happened to you. And what I want to know, and it's a question that's answered in the book, but I just want to hear your personal take on it. Are fetches inherently bad?
No. So we were talking about Mask and Mayan earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Fetches, to me, are just another form of mask. They are, when you are being, like, to bring it back to a real world thing, when you are being hurt at home, the fetch is the person who goes out in public and does their, retail sector job or whatever, and is a good worker and is the person who's doing everything they need to be doing, but part of them seems to be missing. Fetches are just another way of saying not everybody sees what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, yes, of course, it's magical realism, so it's a little more literal than normal. Like, in the real world, if you're being abused, you're not going to have someone taking part of your shadow or your soul, depending on who you're talking to, and putting it in your place while you're being tortured in Arcadia. But it can feel like that, because it feels like, there's two or more different people experiencing these things. I'm not saying that in, like, a multiple personality disorder or whatever sort of way, but, like, trauma survivors do tend to identify different parts of ourselves that react to different things. And some of us name them, some of us don't. I don't particularly, but, like, I know that when I'm with my parents, a much younger version of myself comes out because I feel helpless around them.
Is a fetch sort of like the autopilot function we kind of go on?
Yes, that's a great way to describe it. The fetch is the autopilot function, because essentially what the Fae are doing is taking the code. Like, if you imagine a person as a computer, the Fae are going, oh, this is this person. This is what this person do. Yes, I understand. And then they make a simulacrum of what they think the main code of that program is, and put it in the world. And this is why fetches are often weird.
Mm-hmm.
In the first edition book, there was a short story about a nanny who was watching a little boy who got stolen by the Fae, and she wandered into the hedge trying to find him, and was turned back by a changeling who was in a dog's collar. And the thing that she comments about the little boy once she gets him back is that he doesn't remember his dog's name. Because the Fae didn't think that was important to copy.
That's really sad, actually.
Yeah.
So going off of that in response to that, and this is gonna kind of be like a multi-tiered question. Like, one of my favorite parts of Changeling is just how you eventually, if you're in a campaign, how you can eventually resolve that fetch storyline. And they outline a few things, and each tell compelling stories.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, what does it mean? What does it mean to murder something that's a part of yourself? Because that's one resolution, or accepting it back into your life, or maybe even, and kind of touching back what you said about, you have trauma and you kind of learn to accept it and live with it and use it. How do you realize that your old self and perhaps even your old life needs to just be left behind?
Sorry, I'm gonna ask you to ask me that question again in a TLDR fashion.
Okay.
Ian Watson just popped into the chat for the Onyx Path handle. Hi, Ian. And said the T1000 copying John Connor's foster name didn't know the name of their dog either. TLDR, the T1000 is a fetch.
Yes.
Which is correct. Anyway, Terminator is actually a story about Faye, but we move on. So I really love that there are multiple resolutions to the fetch story.
Mm-hmm.
I've known when I ran a very heavily edited first edition Changeling LARP, one of the characters had made a deal with her fetch that whenever she was in the hedge, her fetch would be in the real world, and whenever she was in the real world, her fetch would be in the hedge. So they didn't feel the pull towards each other, right? So anytime they started feeling that pull, they would just change worlds. And, like, it worked for them. Because basically what that was, you know, out of sight, out of mind. I understand this part of me is here, but I know how to negotiate with it in a way that will keep us both safe. You have the sort of scorched earth bit with the fetch, which I think a lot of changelings do, which is this part of me took over my life and I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will no longer have this part of me. And that is a valid way of engaging with the fetch. Because like you said, it is the autopilot function. Killing the fetch is sort of a choice to live mindfully and damn the consequences. Which is certainly a way you could go, and I'm not knocking it. I know several queer authors who have gone that way, and it seems to be working out for them. Something I am trying to do is reincorporate my fetch into myself. Which allows you to take that autopilot function that kept the people around you, you know, happy, and learning how to incorporate that into yourself as another part of yourself. And that's hard, because a lot of times that part of you doesn't want to engage with the traumatized, fucked up parts of you. And vice versa, because, oh my god, you know, either, oh my god, this is too fucking prickly and I don't want to do that, or oh my god, that, you know, was kowtowing to other people for years and I don't want to engage in that again.
Mm-hmm.
But there are ways to do it healthily that can be good and useful. I think one of my there's a person, sorry, on TikTok. They are a lovely non-binary person. They go by Mark or Marcy. Their handle is Mavrilus on TikTok, and they do, one of their videos is called "Did You Ever Thank the Feral Little Boy?" And it's all about, you know, like, now you're grown up an adult and you understand what's going on in the world, you understand why people hurt you, and you understand it's unfair, but did you ever thank the feral little boy who kept you safe in that hellhole? Yes, of course, I thank him every day, because he kept me safe, and now it is my responsibility as an adult to keep that little boy safe within me. And I think that's really good. Yeah.
I think that's often described in the book as like it's like the middle path, right? It's like what path we feel is like, I guess, the most morally right, but it's also like the most difficult path, like you said.
Yes. And like, it is very easy, and since Ian's in the chat, I'm going to make a Mass Effect reference here. It is very easy to see it as the synthesis option for Mass Effect 3.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, oh yeah, this is the easy option. This is the option everybody wants you to choose, and because it's clearly the right option, clearly the Reapers were wanting you to choose that option. But no, I think in a very important way, integrating your fetch is one of the most powerful and important things you can do in Changeling. Because there's so much conflict around that. But there's so much benefit to both entities for doing it that it's incredibly rewarding when you do it properly.
Ugh, I love that answer, and
Thank you.
I have to stop myself from going into a Mass Effect rant, because I often argue with people a lot when they're like, synthesis, you were indoctrinated, and I'm like, no, it's ultimate. You know what, I'm not even gonna get into it, because that's a deep dive for another day.
My theory is that Shepard, once she gave up her entire body in order to rewrite the DNA of everyone in the galaxy, then reincorporated herself onto a Kuz. because I played the fucking trauma conga of colonist soul survivor.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's no reason if Shepard can send her DNA throughout the entire galaxy, there's no reason she shouldn't be able to reincorporate somewhere of her choosing.
I like that. I like that theory.
Hell yeah.
Gives a little bit of hope. So before we move on to what I call the finishing touches, I have one more point to talk about. One more type of character.
I'm ready.
It's time to talk about the Avowed. For the chat and everyone at home, what are the Avowed?
Avowed? First of all, fuck yeah. So, you may recognize that in many World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness books, you have what are referred to as sort of the secondary supernaturals. For vampires, they're ghouls. For mages, they're cultists. For werewolves, they're kinfolk. I don't know if Geists have them necessarily. I'm sure they do. I'm not very familiar with Geist. I'd have to go read up on them.
Good thing you might be. Maybe you should play in a Geist game to figure
maybe
it out.
I should play in a Geist game. Wild. Do you know anyone who's running one?
I don't know. I will have to check.
But yeah, no. Trying to think who else. Demons have cultists too. God Machine has stigmatics.
Oh my goddamn! I love the God Machine. That's an
I love the God Machine so much.
Deep dive into the machine.
So much. But we're not here to deep dive into the God Machine. But if you ever want to have me on to deep dive into the God Machine, I have feelings about it. But no, you have these sort of people who are supernatural by association with these other supernatural entities. And I find them fascinating. My first work for Onyx Path was actually writing ghouls for Half Damned, which is an excellent book and you should pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Dawkins and I wrote the ghouls section and we're very proud of it. But Avowed are that for changelings. They're people who the strength of their promise was so strong that they literally followed the changeling into hell. The idea is that changelings, once they are taken, still have promises from people in the real world, the mortal world. And these people have the power of loyalty, basically. So, like, if somebody is taken into Arcadia and their best friend was like, I will always be there for you, all you have to do is call me. And that person shouts their friend's name while in their durance. That person whose best friend has gone missing is like, I am needed.
Mm-hmm.
So the Avowed are actually humans who the strength of their promise, the intent and the strength of their promise was so strong and so honest that the weird, once it has become aware of the changeling in Arcadia, reaches out to this person and goes, you are going to rescue them from Arcadia. This does not always work out. Often Avowed can get fairly fucked up because basically once you're in the hedge, you now have a glamour pool. If you're an Avowed, this doesn't work for all humans.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are an Avowed and the weird takes notice of you and pulls you into the hedge, you now have the ability to interact with the weird and with glamour. And you're not always going to find your changeling. If you get distracted from your purpose, you're not going to find your changeling. If a goblin starts attacking you, or you wander off the path, or something gets in your way, you're not going to find your changeling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the weird does help by making it easier and saying, oh, well, this is a promise you made and you will keep this promise. So it does tend to make things a little easier for the Avowed, but in most cases, the Avowed is a human with no contracts in the hedge. And that doesn't always work out super well for them. Now, many changelings who see a human in the hedge will go, oh, I need to get them out of here. But with the avowed, changelings can usually sense that and be like, aha, oh, I need to get you out of here, but also I don't want to prevent another changeling from escaping. Because avowed who are in the hedge usually suggest that there is a changeling in Arcadia that still has yet to leave. And for almost all changelings, and like we haven't talked, for example, about privateers or loyalists, which are their whole other thing about responses to trauma, about trauma bonding, and identifying with your abuser more than with other people who are abused or people who are trying to help you. Because those are like changelings with Stockholm syndrome, essentially. Apart from those changelings, almost any changeling will be like, oh god, I can't prevent another changeling from escaping. I can't do that.
Yeah.
That's unthinkable. But also, there's a human in the hedge, and that's bad. Because the hedge is dangerous. So
the avowed have sometimes could have a very short life expectancy.
Yeah. I would love to see an all avowed chronicle. I think that would be super fun. But essentially, you essentially have what are ghouls to changelings, vampires, right? So you have these people who are bound to these specific changelings by the weird, but they're also humans who get their first taste of glamour. These are people who have discovered fire for the first time, essentially. And that's intoxicating. It is more intoxicating than this cooking wine. But some avowed get super high off their own supply. Right? Like some avowed actually get super addicted to glamour.
Yes.
And will re-enter the hedge whenever possible, up to and including fighting changelings who are trying to keep them out of the hedge. So avowed, in a way, are sort of the people who are trying to rescue, or not even rescue because I hate that term. There are people whose ties to abuse survivors cause them to be incredibly powerful and intertwined with these survivors. But it also puts them in a lot of danger because they start sort of identifying with the survivor more so than the world outside of themselves. So they don't get the benefits of kiths or seemings. They don't get, like, they can make contracts, but they're not intrinsic to the avowed. They have to learn how to deal with it. They have to understand how to engage with things that changelings understand on an intuitive level. And they get super addicted to the feeling of engaging with glamour, of engaging with contracts. A great example is, I'm going to use myself as an example, white people who engage in protests against anti-Black racism. It's a huge rush, right? But you also have to be aware of what your own limitations are and be aware to make space for the people who are actually harmed by the system or Arcadia or whatever, and do not get so fucking high on your addiction to glamour and on being in that space that you hurt the people you're trying to help.
Like it's like moral indulgence.
Yes. Moral indulgence is a great term for it.
We're just coming up with amazing terms.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
That's really like, because the avowed have always kind of like confused me. So I really do think you put it into a good perspective. And I love that analogy at the end. It's like, you're supposed to be, you're there for the changeling, and it's your love of that changeling and or that promise, that connection that got you there in the first place. And it's like the glamour kind of just like can start to slowly corrupt it over time.
Oh yeah, very much.
And you're
like there's a very classic sort of abuser tactic, and like people can become abusers without realizing it. with the good intentions, but the rescuer-rescued dynamic is one of the biggest, like, sort of unintentional abuse dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that, like, you constantly have to be rescuing this person from themselves gives you such a feeling of control over that person
Mm-hmm.
that, like, it can be hard to break out of that.
Yeah, I think that we even go in time with like people in relationships that call themselves or that consider themselves like fixers.
Yeah.
Like, and it's
Yeah.
like whether or not, because it could be for control, but it also could be like you're filling a gap in yourself that you never had. So maybe that's what the Avowed are just making up for.
And like the Avowed, I should be clear, the Avowed are not bad people.
Mm-hmm.
The Avowed are people who made a promise with the intent of keeping it, and the Lost actually call them the Avowed as a term of honor. Because their other term is Fae Touched.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's true too, but the Lost call them the Avowed with a capital A as a term of respect and a term of honor, because these are people whose promise was so strong and so true that it guided them into the hedge. And that's like, for any changeling, that's super heroic, right? Because most changelings didn't go into the hedge willingly.
Yeah.
Most changelings were pulled into the hedge on their way to Arcadia. I mean, some changelings might have been Avowed, and that's like a really tragic end too. And like, it's not an end, it's a beginning to another story. But it's a very tragic end for somebody being an Avowed to become a changeling, because they were going into the hedge to, with the strength of their promise, to rescue that person, but their promise wasn't strong enough to protect them from the Fae, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a good example of a very tragic Avowed is Orpheus and Eurydice.
I was
right?
just thinking that. Oh my
Right?
god.
Well, because his love for Eurydice led him into the underworld, but his love for Eurydice was too strong to, you know, fucking cause him to keep the promise that allowed him to get her back.
Yeah. And it's sad though. Oh my god, and I love that story because it was his passion for her and his beautiful music. He managed to survive an encounter with Hades. He like charmed Persephone, and he ultimately would have succeeded. And and you just hate to see it happen.
You hate to see it. Unlike Hades Town could very easily be a changeling story.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, I'm using specifically Hades Town because of like the sort of Depression era, like magical realism aesthetic it has going for it.
Mm-hmm.
And like Orpheus and Eurydice itself could be a changeling story, but whereas you have someone with a successful Avowed story, you have someone like Janet and Tam Lin, if you're familiar with the Ballad of Tam Lin, where she meets this fairy knight on her father's lands and falls in love with him and gets pregnant by him, and is like, okay, I can't have this child out of wedlock, I will turn you back into a human. And she has to cling to him even though the fairy queen turns him into like a bull and a bear and a bar of hot steel and a flaming coal, and she basically has to hold on to him throughout all of these and not let go. And that's an example of somebody whose promise was strong enough to overcome any temptation to bring someone back.
It's yet again, it goes back to the power of human will, which the Fae do not have. Like, we kind of thought they don't have.
Well, it's not even will necessarily, because Fae have will for days. Fae are super stubborn, but it's the ability of humanity to adapt, to change our own stories, to be able to realize a goal even though there are obstacles. You know, it's our ability to change, to be different people from one moment to the next, to be able to engage in these healthy relationships of compromise and bonding where we're not so stuck on our own titles to not engage in relationships.
I like that. I like that explanation.
Yay.
That's it's such a multifaceted system. There's so much, and even though we're kind of rounding out the towards the last section of the deep dive right now for this, I feel like there's still so much we can delve into about lore.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like these last finishing touches, someone can watch these 2 episodes and be like, you know what? I feel like I understand how to run Changeling, which is really what it is at the end of the day. And I hope more people run this game, because I've played in this game like maybe like once or twice, and I love the rules. Like, I love Chronicles of Darkness, and I've always wanted to play more of this, and I want others to be able to play more of this. So here's where the kind of hopeful questions come in. Maybe not truly hopeful, but so one of my favorite things in Changeling is it's a game that's about permanent change and dealing with it. So to you, what does victory, or you know what, a better word, what does the final resolution to you look like in Changeling? Oftentimes, you know, we play like your starter, what we call our starter TTRPGs, like your D&D and stuff, which is like, oh, the heroes beat the bad guy. That's fine. It's okay. We're all cool. I want to take this hat off, but I'm sticking to the character.
Okay.
But it's like in D&D, it's like, okay, the resolution. You beat the bad guy. You get the monsters. You get the level. You get the loot. You save the world. But like Changeling, resolutions are often like reality, resolutions are often messy and kind of leaving you wanting. So in your mind, what does resolution of like a campaign look like in Changeling, I guess, or?
I think it really depends on your scope. There is an excellent book for first edition called Equinox Road, which I highly recommend to anybody running a high-powered Changeling game, or to anyone who really wants to sort of explore the metaphysics behind Changeling. A lot of what is addressed in Equinox Road is addressed in second edition, because we used Equinox Road as something we wanted to write towards. But I think it's a really good sort of 101 book. Thank you very much, Ian. You're awesome. But I think it's a really, really good book for understanding what sort of a resolution to a Changeling game can be. And something it does really well is not just saying, oh, well, a resolution to your Changeling game would be this person goes back into Arcadia and slays their keeper or whatever. Or, you know, there's a huge final showdown between your characters and the Fae. And I think while that is a valid way of looking at Changeling, it's not the only way to look at Changeling. I think it's a very easy way to look at Changeling. Something that I have been doing a lot of during this quarantine is reading a lot of what are referred to as anarcho-nihilist texts. Things like Blessed is the Flame and Desert, and both of those are texts about how thinking of revolution as this final battle against a system that we will ultimately overcome via our will is ultimately a false dichotomy. There will almost always be that system because there are things to perpetuate that system. The thing we can do is carve out spaces in that system for ourselves to experience joy and freedom. And for me, ending a Changeling game is being able to carve out a space where your Changeling can exist, if not in peace, then in relative joy, right? A space where they can be themselves, even if that self changes from one moment to the next. Space where that Changeling feels at home. Because fundamentally, at the beginning of Changeling, your home has been taken from you.
Yeah.
You're not at home in Arcadia. You're not at home in your mortal place. Even the hedge isn't exactly home, even though it feels more at home than most places because it's so dangerous. But finding a way for your character to achieve a sense of homeostasis, almost like a sense of not constantly being in fight, flight, or freeze space, a sense of being stable. Like, even if that stability doesn't last forever, because as we all know, a story continues even after a book closes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But you want to be able to get to that space where the book closes and feel a sense of resolution and catharsis. And that's why we play games, right? Is because the real world doesn't really offer us a sense of happily ever after or even, and then the book closes here. Because life just keeps going. And part of the reason we engage with narratives, with video gaming or tabletop gaming or anything of that nature, is so we can have a satisfying conclusion. And finding what satisfies your players, finding what satisfies you as a GM, finding what causes these characters to, at the end of the chronicle, be in a place where you can look at them and go, I am so proud of you. I will leave you here because I trust you to handle the rest of it. That's such a good feeling.
So, in order to kind of make it a little cheesy, the resolution of Changeling the Lost is to be found.
Yes!
To no longer be lost.
Good job! I'm so proud of you. You get it. You get it. You find what it is. And, like, it just doesn't have to be one thing, right? You don't have to join an entitlement or become a paragon of a court. You find what brings you joy, even if that's like two diametrically opposed things. You find what causes you to be present in yourself. You find what causes you to be able to live your life on your terms. Thank you. Sorry. We were talking about Avowed, and my partner just came into the room and gave me a double thumbs up, so I'm very proud. Thank you. Also, he's making me a roast with wine sauce, which is why I'm drinking terrible cooking wine. The sauce is going to be amazing, but cooking wine is not great. But I'm gonna grab my horns for this because I'm so emotional. It's the ability to be, again, it's the ability to be able to look at your character and go, you've come so far. And after this, I know you can handle anything. I know you know what to do. I no longer have to guide you through this story because you know what to do.
So, the one thing I want to resolve, so as in your mind, as long as Arcadia exists, are the Lost ever truly free?
No. But as long as your abuser is alive, or as long as you remember your abuser, are you ever truly free?
Probably not.
But here's the thing, right? The Lost are never truly free, because even if Arcadia dissolves tomorrow, they still know what happened. Even if they don't fully remember it, even if it only happens in nightmares, even if it's why they keep themselves awake until 3 a.m. until they're too tired to go to sleep, to not go to sleep and like fall asleep into a totally dreamless sleep because they're too tired to go into REM sleep. It's still going to be there. Even if Arcadia dissolves tomorrow, those scars are still going to live in those changelings. Like, my abusers, some of the biggest abusers in my life who aren't my parents live in Palo Alto, California. That is about as far away from me as you could get without living in a different country, right? That's 3,000 miles away from me because I'm on the East Coast. If somebody does something that reminds me too much of them, I have to express. Like, if there's somebody who's important to me, I'll tell them what happened to me, like, this really hurt me. Or if there's somebody who's not super close to me, I'll just kind of kick them out of my life until I decide that, you know, there's somebody I can deal with, which is not a very healthy coping mechanism, but it's what I have right now. But, like, those people don't talk to me anymore. Those people don't engage with me anymore. I don't have to see them every month like I used to. I don't get emails from them. I don't get calls from them. Like, either have respected me saying don't contact me again, or I have blocked them completely out of my life. And yet, sometimes people still do or say things that remind me of them, that make me feel unsafe, that cause me to be activated. And does that mean I am free of them even though I don't engage with them anymore?
It's kind of tough to say, to be honest. I feel like that's an answer only you can really, the person can
Exactly.
Really define.
So I don't really know if anyone in the Chronicles of Darkness is ever truly free of anything that ever affects them, right? Because deviants, even if their conspiracy were to die tomorrow, even if they were to totally vanish off the face of the earth, there would always be a new conspiracy willing to pick them up. Vampires, they're still going to be predators in the world.
Yeah, for them
right?
Specifically, like, death is pretty much the only end they have.
Yeah, werewolves, constantly surrounded by spirits. Everything has a spirit. Everything. Mages are aware of the different facets of reality. And even if they were, like, if the different facets of reality were to disappear tomorrow, there'd be no reality. Right? Like, It's thinking of being truly free in the world of darkness, or the Chronicles of Darkness, is to completely ignore the existence of the world or Chronicles of Darkness. Because this is a system you cannot escape. It is built to be that way.
It's systemic horror.
It is. It is both systemic and cosmic horror. Does that mean the game itself has to be bad and depressing the whole time? No, because abuse survivors, we live in a culture that supports abuse, even if we say we don't. Because we live in a culture that says we have to be winners, we have to be self-sufficient, we have to be someone who is not relying on others for help, because relying on others for help is needy or attention-seeking or whatever. And like, recently I had a friend who was like, should I call the cops if somebody's being abused in the apartment above me? And I said no, because the cops, more likely than not, are going to make that situation worse. But you can go up to you can either call social services, or you can go up to that apartment with a buddy or three and be like, yo, what the fuck's going on here? Because usually that's all de-escalation takes. But we are so conditioned to mind our own goddamn business that we won't do that.
It's a oh man, it just kind of puts into, I think you could make the argument then that Changeling, perhaps even every Chronicles of Darkness, it's hope punk.
Yes.
It's all about hope. You know,
it is not Noble Bright, but is definitely hope punk.
Yeah, because Changeling, the way you describe Changeling is the same way I go with another game, Geist, which is one of my favorite things about Geist. And just getting off topic for a second, but it does loop around, is that Geist, like, you die and you make a bid to come back, and at the end of the day you come back and you're like, okay, like, I've extended my life, but like, I'm going to die eventually. Like, I've already faced death once, so might as well just enjoy and celebrate what I have, and like live it to the fullest, which I think is amazing. And you know, and everyone's kind of trying to fight like the deviant. It's like, you know, maybe all they are is revenge, and maybe all they are is taking down conspiracies. But in that moment, the deviant probably is, when the deviant is taking down the conspiracies, it's when they truly probably feel the most alive.
Yeah, the deviant is actually what a lot of anarcho-nihilist texts call jouissance. Jouissance is an anarchist word. I don't know if it's actually properly a French word. Ian can correct me on this because Ian knows more French than I do. But jouissance in an anarchist in an anarchist context means the joy of rebellion. It is not, I am rebelling because someday there will be a climactic final battle a la Revelations, and then everything will be fine. It is the idea that rebellion is good for its own sake. And the fact that changelings have escaped from the true Fae, who are gods in their own right. They are the embodiment of what they say they are. They cannot be anything else. They are incredibly powerful in that one or two, depending on how many titles they have. They're incredibly powerful in that one or two space, and the changeling escaped. And yes, maybe those gods are sending huntsmen after them, and yes, maybe those gods will never stop looking for them. Maybe those gods let them out of that cage to see what they would do. But for that moment, however long that moment is, it could be 5 minutes, it could be the rest of your life. For that moment, you are you. You are not what that story says you are. You are not that shaping attack they made on you. You are you. And that is the most beautiful thing you could possibly be.
I love it.
Thank you.
It's the way to perfectly round out our last range of questions, but before
I came up with that myself.
Before we get to the super hopeful joy part,
oh, is that not the super hopeful joy part?
We are. We're gonna get to the super
okay. I'm ready. I'm ready.
The ending, but before that, I want, because you mentioned it, you wanted as a question, and I think we could skip this question right here I'm about to do, because I feel like if people want to play Changeling and they're on the fence about it, this video should have convinced them. This video should teach them. It should tell them everything they want to know about this goddamn system, because it's beautiful and I love it.
If you want to play Changeling and you're still not sure, you can reach out to me on my website, and I will hype Changeling to you until you want to play it.
So my question is, I want to run Changeling. What are some media I should consume?
Hell yeah! Okay. So the obvious media you should consume. Pan's Labyrinth. Actually just Labyrinth by the Jim Henson Company. Mirror Mask. Excellent choice for that.
I love Mirror. Oh my god, I love that movie so much.
I know, right?
It's like a fever dream. I forget that movie exists half the time until...
So it's funny because Mirror Mask, Labyrinth, and The Dark Crystal are all considered to sort of be Jim Henson's like weird Fae trilogy.
Is Mirror Mask Jim Henson?
I think so.
That's awesome. I never knew that. That's fucking great.
Definitely read any version of the Ballad of Tam Lin you can get your hands on. That's a great inspiration. Honestly, a lot of Guillermo del Toro movies. A great inspiration for Changeling Lost. Crimson Peak, surprisingly good Changeling movie. God, if you want to go more into sort of the real world influences that inspired Changeling for me, because again, Changeling is several steps removed from actual abuse. You're not actually, putting a fucking creation made out of your shadow and sticks and clay in your place. Something I love about Changeling is that it does have that magical realism, right? It has that layer of remove, because a lot of times trauma itself can feel like magical realism. It can feel like spells happening. It can feel like you're caught in this weird dimension and you don't understand the rules to it until you do. And then understanding the rules to it can actually be harmful to you in the real world. But I digress. If you want to read things that were helpful to me as a trauma survivor in both understanding myself and understanding Changeling, I strongly suggest Trauma and Recovery by Judith Herman. I recommend Dirty River by Lee Lakshmi Papizna Samarsahina. I recommend Fucking Magic. Goodness, by Clementine Morrigan. See, it was so powerful that I had to sneeze before I said it.
It means the Fae are onto you.
They are. I also strongly recommend her zine Trauma Magic, because something she talks about are Fae as a metaphor for environmentalism, which is not something I had thought of, but she talks about like fairy trees in the middle of fields. Like Irish farmers used to refuse to cut those down because they were seen as a sign of the Fae in your fields, and if you cut down the tree they were in, they would freak out at you and cause your crop to die. But in a very real way, having that tree in the middle of your fields causes the topsoil to remain there. So if you're respecting the Fae, then you're actually respecting the health of your fields.
Makes
is very
sense.
cool because it's very much this idea of Fae as contract with the earth, which I think is very cool. It's not quite Fae in the sense of Changeling the Lost, because in Changeling the Lost, the Fae are always the enemy. But it's a very interesting way to sort of look at it. So those are the ones I recommend as sort of real world suggestions. The 12 Swans is an excellent folktale I would also look into. I'm also going to look at what we recommended as our media in our mediography in Changing the Lost 2nd edition. I already mentioned Mirror Mask. I already mentioned Labyrinth. Over the Garden Wall is an incredible Changeling story. Definitely watch that. It is such a Changeling story. And people are like, oh no, it's a journey through the underworld. I respect that. I get it. It could very easily be a Geist or a Wraith story as well. And my god, do I have thoughts about how the themes of Wraith the Oblivion and Changeling the Dreaming were switched for Changeling the Lost and Geist the Sin-Eaters. Because that's so fucking cool. Like, instead of having happy Fae and tragic necromancy, now you have happy necromancy and tragic Fae, and how fucking cool is that? Like, that's such a reversal of the standard. I love that. Anyway, hello, my name is Jax. I'm a fan of both White Wolf and Onyx Path. They both mean very much to me. Changeling the Lost saved my life, if you knew this. Jessica Jones season 1 is actually something we recommended, and I think that's very cool because Kilgrave, the way Kilgrave controls Jessica throughout that entire season, Jessica does not heal fully once Kilgrave is dead. Kilgrave lives on in Jessica, and that's intentional.
A little process of recovery. I would even say, I'm trying to think of stuff. I don't know if people are anime fans out there, but there's this great show that you can watch on Amazon Prime called Made in the Abyss.
Okay.
And that's a Changeling tale, I feel, because you're entering a world that's almost fantastical, and as you get deeper and deeper into it, you find yourself unable to go back to your original life, and 2, changing fundamentally, perhaps. For the better, perhaps for the worse.
What is a very fun sort of reverse Changeling tale, and I say reverse not because like the person stops being a Changeling, but because it is the opposite of what you think it is Welcome to Demon School Iramakun, which is an anime you can watch on Crunchyroll. And it's about this boy who was heavily abused by his parents. Then they trade him to the demon Solomon for a case of champagne. And he thinks, oh god, I'm going to be eaten by this demon, and this is terrible.
And it's so much
better.
The
demon is like, I am so happy to have you, and I'm so happy you're out of this space. You are going to be my favorite, and I'm going to send you to school, and you're going to be the best, and you're going to learn how to be yourself. And what Welcome to Demon School Iramakun is essentially about escaping the Fae who want to hold you in this life of drudgery and servitude, and then you just enter this space of wonder and healing and learning what you want and not what they want and what you can be.
I love that. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's great. It has been, holy shit, it's
do we have any more happy questions to ask me before you let me go?
No, there's 3. We're gonna wind down to the point where I'm about to change the music because it's what I like to do.
Oh, before we go, I do have a Spotify playlist that I use when I write Changeling. If you would like me to share that.
You should definitely share that because that would be amazing.
I'm gonna do that.
And as you're doing it, I'm gonna ask you the last few questions.
Okay. Actually, can I make a request for the music?
Yes. It's gotta be something copyright free, unfortunately, because we can't.
Damn it. Okay.
I don't want to get sued.
But I do want to tell you the song that makes me think most of ending a Changeling game, of ending a Changeling Chronicle and realizing your character will be fine from here. It is the song Journey of the Sorcerer by the Eagles, which is the opening to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio play and all other Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy media since then.
I'll have to give that a listen to. That's the... I just love the title of that alone.
Well, tweet to me when you listen to it because I want to hear your reaction, okay?
All right, sounds good. So
Cool.
I want to... So firstly, Jax, we've talked for nearly 6 hours total on Changeling.
Jesus.
It has been quite a ride. It's been
such a ride.
It's been the last episode of the deep dive of season 1. And you know, this is a friendship that started nearly a year ago at VHC when we first got on the...
It's true. Oh my god, it's almost been a year. That's wild.
At on the Tones and Atmosphere channel. But I want to ask you, how's your life going right now? How are you doing personally?
Well, right now, as I said, my husband is indefinitely with his mom. Hopefully that will be fixed a little bit once his mom figures out what's up with her leg. Once again, hi Ben and Ellen, if you're watching. I'm really happy to have you watching this. You're great. Ellen is honestly one of the best mother-in-laws I could have asked for. I'm saying that because I don't know what sort of mother-in-law I could have asked for, but Ellen is amazing. I have this lovely boyfriend who is just off screen, who just finished making me a 2-pound rump roast with a Merlot pan... Was it Merlot? Red Zinfandel pan sauce with mushrooms and garlic. And I'm very happy about that. I'm delighted.
Give a clap for the Merlot roast making boyfriend, everyone give a clap.
Zinfandel, Red Zinfandel. Yes. And yeah, no, I mean being polyamorous in the time of plague is hard, but it also means I have more people to talk to about my feelings. So I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. I've been listening to the Magnus Archives a lot. For those of you who don't know the Magnus Archives, strongly recommend you listen to them. Actually, honestly, the Magnus Archives might be a good Changeling story because you have these things that are what they are and you're not sure what they are, but they're controlling you. So like, hello, Rusty Quill, if you're listening to this. I was named a friend of Rusty Quill at VHC, and it was one of the biggest honors I've ever received in my life.
Aww.
And I love Rusty. I love the folks at Rusty Quill. They're just wonderful, and I would really like to work with them in the future. We've had some minor discussions of that already, but hopefully that will pan out. I'm very excited with a lot of projects I'm working on right now. I wish I knew how to relax. I'm working on it. Still not very good at that because I worry that if I relax, I'm gonna drop something. You know, it's hard, but I'm learning. And honestly, COVID has been really good for reinforcing my boundaries. I am learning what I can tolerate and what I cannot tolerate, and what I've been tolerating for the sake of politeness. That is not to say you're just wonderful. Just to be clear. But it's good to learn what, especially as a tiny femme person who was raised to conform to the demands of a society that wants to wring every drop they can out of me, learning what I can tolerate and learning what I tolerate out of politeness is a very important lesson for me to learn.
Well,
so I'm very proud of that. Also, I've been writing a lot of zines.
That's good. That's how it should be.
Hell yeah.
Be creatively juiced. And honestly, I think Changeling's the perfect game for the pandemic. Just because we talk about being isolated from each other. We talk about being lost. And those tiny moments that we can find each other are the moments that really do matter. And I think that's kind of amazing, to be honest. So the last question...
How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing good, and you know what? I'll get into that in a second because I'll do. But the last question I want to ask you: is you like Changeling, you have a lot of games you love. If people like Changeling, what other RPGs should they check out?
Oh, good question. I love this question because I love talking about RPGs. So I'm going to give you a fun fact before I do this.
Okay.
I was one of those children who grew up going, D&D is the only RPG and every other RPG just wants to be D&D and they're pretending to be D&D.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I also grew up Republican, so, you know. But Changeling and the Chronicles of Darkness really changed that for me. Really made me realize that, like, no, it's fine to explore other things. You don't have to cling to this one thing you've known all your life, which I think is actually a very good lesson to learn from Changeling. But if you like Changeling, if you like this sort of horror of healing from something that harmed you and learning how to exist, I strongly recommend Bluebeard's Bride. One of my favorite games to run. It's very easy to run. It's very easy to play. It's all about horror of patriarchy. This is the best way to describe it. Is magical realism patriarchy horror. The designers, who are all queer traumatized women, describe it as feminine horror, which I think is great. But you can also play it as a non-binary person or a trans woman. Like the main character, you can play the main character as a non-binary person or a trans woman. You can obviously play it as whatever gender you are. No person is actually barred from playing the game. But the idea is that Bluebeard is trying to fit you into this very specific female-shaped box. And yes, when I say female, I mean sort of person who would go female. But yeah, it's a very, very specific shaped box. So check out Bluebeard's Bride if that's sort of horror you like. I really like Lovecraft-esque by Black Armada Games. I have referred to that as the Cosmic Horror Walking Simulator. That's a really fun game because you actually switch who's playing the main character and who's playing the environment, and it goes around the table. And it is the journey of this protagonist delving deeper into darkness and having a brush with dark powers. They don't fight it like Call of Cthulhu or anything. They just engage with it. And that's so cool to me because it's very collaborative. Dread is a great game. It uses a Jenga tower instead of dice, and it actually uses a personality quiz as your character sheet, which I think is brilliant. 10 Candles, obviously. I'm very dear friends with Stephen Dewey, who wrote the game. It's a tragic horror game about, hope and burning out in the face of overwhelming darkness. Very, very fun. He's so good!
He signed my copy of 10 Candles. I wish I could. I got to dig through to grab it down here.
He's such a sweetheart. I love him so much. He's such a good friend. He and I have been hanging out at conventions since I think 2 or 3 years ago, where I was like, "You're Stephen Dewey. Okay, I'm gonna follow you around the con," and that's how we became friends. I swear it wasn't creepy. It was totally consensual. Because I followed him on Twitter, and I'm like, "I want to meet you at this convention," and then we met, and then our friendship just sort of clicked, and then we're like, "We're gonna be buds."
That's awesome.
We're just gonna be super buds. Also, my boyfriend knows Stephen Dewey.
Oh, that's cool. That's how I met up with Gehenna. It was just at a convention, just talking to them and been fans of them.
He is such a good banana. Man, we got so many bits just now. That was awesome.
What?
Yeah, we got some bits. The bits.
I got bits.
The bits. Sorry,
It's like
I used to stream regularly until the pandemic hit, and then I was just like, I do not have space for this, unless somebody else is hosting. But whenever we got bits, Justin, who was on here earlier, Static Delaware, and I used to stream together and yell the bits anytime someone gave us bits. So I'm glad I could carry that over onto the stream. Other games. Oh my gosh. What other games? Well, Ian's in the stream, so check out Trinity. Trinity is Ian's baby. It's about superheroes. It's not about superheroes. I'm sorry. He's gonna flog me for saying that. It is about people with talents and extraordinary abilities living in a world that may or may not accept them. And sort of the taglines for the three main games of Trinity, which are Adventure, Aberrant, and Aeon, are hope, sacrifice, and unity. So that should tell you everything you need to know about that game. It's a fabulous game. It's very, very good. I remember at one point we were at a panel and Ian was on the panel and someone looked at Ian in all seriousness and went, Aberrant is a really nihilistic name. Have you considered changing it? And
that's the point.
Ian just sort of looked at him and Rich Thomas went, I'm going to answer this one. The game isn't called Hope, Fluffy Feelings, and Unity. And Ian says, especially in 2020, I wanted to make a game about doing the right thing and making the world a better place. I think that's awesome. Because, yeah, like, for me, gaming is that chance to be able to have that final battle in a lot of cases. Being able to make the world a better place in a way that won't change in 100 years. Because in your game world, that can happen. In the real world, fuck it, we still haven't gotten rid of slavery in the United States. Like, all gaming is political. Fight me.
Boom.
Anyone who says gaming isn't political doesn't understand the definition of political. Anyway, sorry to get heated in the last couple of minutes of this.
It was all from a place of love. That's what matters.
Ian, my power of fantasy is helping people. Me too. This is why I chose the Paragon path in Mass Effect. But yeah, definitely check out Trinity, Bluebird's Bride, 10 Candles, Lovecraft-esque. Check out After the War, which is a game that Jason Pitt and Alistair Stewart wrote together, and that I got to write the opening adventure for, which was a huge compliment to me. I really enjoyed writing that. That is a game about post-war trauma specifically. And they call it a game of mimetic horror because the war was between this virus that came from outer space that caused people to be in this singing hive mind called the Song. And the virus humans developed to counter that, which was called Tormenta. And the Song is all about community without boundaries. And Tormenta is all about individualism without connection.
Evangelion.
Sort of. But it's a beautiful game and you should absolutely check it out. And
I'll have to check that out. That sounds amazing.
If you need more convincing, Alistair Stewart, who is one of the developers of the game, played Peter Lucas in the Magnus Archives. So, speaking of a game where you're lonely and separated from other people,
ties in very nicely. All right,
to quote Peter Lucas, I don't like conflict.
And with that, first off, Jax, I just want to thank you. Wait, I need more inspirational music. I'm putting the music. Okay, I just want to thank you for being on the show.
Yeah,
you were the perfect guest to round out the end of the deep dive, season 1. No, seriously, you brought so much spirit, so much tenacity, so much passion, and
you're gonna make me blush.
And even beyond that, just straight up like intelligence and knowledge on the subject matter, because it's not an easy game to discuss, and it's not an easy game to break down. But we did it. We made it to the top of the mountain. We went through 6 hours of talking extensively about this game, and I feel like all of us are happy for it.
I think so too. I feel like I need a cigarette.
You could definitely have that right now.
I don't smoke, but I feel like I need a cigarette.
You could take a mental cigarette if you
want. There we
go. I just want to speak to the viewers right now. Thank you so much for coming to the stream. Like, you could have hated it, you could have loved it, but the positive thing is that you came anyway. And you kept giving me...
Like Faye, we crave an audience in order to perform our roles, and you provided that for us. So thank you.
Exactly. You enabled me to make all these great episodes, to do all this research, to delve into all these interesting systems. And you know what? It's not over yet, because nothing is ever truly over.
That's right.
I'm going to be taking the month of January off to just refocus, because I got a lot of stuff going on, and I should be back February fresh with a new episode, and we'll continue from there. I want to thank you, the viewers, for watching. I want to thank every person that's been on the deep dive: Wes, Brian, Rick, Miguel, Mark, and finally Jax, because I'm just one part of the show. It's the guests that really bring it. I wanted to bring.
What did Wes deep dive into?
Wes was the first one ever, and we did Alien RPG, and it was amazing.
That's fucking awesome.
And it was just the ultimate bromance come to life, and you know what? I would never have it any other way, and I'm really
thankful. Did you know there was an Alien RPG? Yeah.
What?
So my boyfriend is very into Alien. Didn't know there was an Alien RPG. Now I have to introduce him to it.
It was the Ennies, I think, best game of the or best game of the year.
It's very good.
Yeah, Free League dominated, and we have some more stuff coming for. You know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna announce it. We have Alien Destroyer of Worlds is a stream that's gonna be coming up in January, that we're gonna be playing, and I'm gonna be running. And,
Hell yeah!
Wes is gonna be in it because we love Wes.
We love Wes.
Yeah, so
Who doesn't love Wes?
I
maybe love Wes a little too much. That's okay.
It's okay. Wes needs the love, and that's it.
You can clip that.
I just want to talk to everyone. 2020 as a whole, it was hard. It was tough. The pandemic was tough on us, and it's still going on. But everyone that didn't know, because I want to be faithful, I want to be truthful, you guys. So I ended up contracting COVID about a couple weeks ago. I'm fine. My family contracted it. It was a little tough on them. So the last last month has been tough, to the point where I wasn't even sure I was going to do the deep dive to finish it, but I'm glad I did. And
I'm glad you did too.
I love everyone that's viewing, all the people that came on for, not just talking about the games, but for being like emotional, for sharing, especially you, Jack. You shared stuff that like I didn't expect you would share, and it honestly, I'm sure someone out there found it and looked at it and got something great out of it. And even people that I had only met once, like Miguel shared stuff when we were talking about Mothership, and Mark shared some personal stuff, and Rick and Wes and even Brian, and it was just this amazing amalgamation of just people coming together and talking about games that they love, because that's the deep dive. It's the show for Game Masters by Game Masters. There's really nothing else to say, but this is not the end. You're gonna see my face a lot in January. The next thing you're gonna see me on is on January 1st. I'm going to be playing the Interstitial War on Carrying Comfort Studios. Kingdom Hearts. I'm gonna be jamming it. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be awesome. And Jax.
And then you're gonna see me in Nick's Geist game, which is gonna be fucking amazing.
It's okay. Okay, yeah.
Oh shit! Sorry.
It's okay.
Look at this Changeling book. It's a distraction. It's so shiny. Look, you can get Changeling lost second edition.
It's fine. It's whatever. Enough people know that's probably leaked already. But Jax, what do you got? So, let the people know what you got going on right now.
Oh gosh, projects. I'm so sorry, Nick.
No, I don't. That's fine.
Oh man. Wow, I'm embarrassed. I can blame the cooking wine because I finished it. But this would be a really funny moment for my boyfriend to just like come out and refill my teacup. Don't do that.
More wine.
No, do not. Oh my God, here we go. Okay.
The wine.
Thank you, darling. That's enough. Just wanted to prove that he was there and I'm not like talking to a ghost.
To a fae.
I'm helping. But no, this was thrilling because this was the last stream I have planned for some time until we do the secret thing that I totally didn't just mention right now. I have a whole bunch of projects coming up. There are some Changeling books coming out next year that will have my name on them that are very excited. I've already talked about some of them on this stream. I hope you'll enjoy them. Working on some stuff with Fading Suns. I'm developing a book for Cult Divinity Lost that is tentatively titled In Youth We Learn, about playing children in the world of Cult. It'll be the first book ever about playing children in the world of Cult, and I'm so excited.
Yo, I wrote in for that.
What?
I wrote in for that. I wasn't
Well, hell
accepted,
yeah.
but it's okay.
That's okay. I
Keep
think you
trying.
might have actually been on my list of people to keep on my list. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
I mean, what?
Oh.
Yes, that's great. That's great.
You did better than Mark.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't tell me that. I don't want to know.
No,
I love
you're
Mark.
Mark did fine. Don't worry about it.
I love Mark. Mark is amazing.
But I'm very excited because I have an award-winning playwright, a Black queer woman who's an award-winning playwright on the book. I have someone from the New Zealand Maori. I have a lot of people on this book who I'm very excited to work with, and we have so much cool shit. I also have Kiana Shaw, who wrote the Annie Award-winning TTRPG safety kit on Google Docs. On the book, writing about safety. I have Wes on the book. That's very exciting. I have someone who worked on Magic the Gathering with me because I worked on the Zendikar set for Magic the Gathering. Working on this book. There's so many people working on this book that I'm so excited to be working with. And it's my first development project ever. Like, how cool is that? It is my first book that I've ever developed that is not self-published, and I'm very excited to be working with all these people on it. So yeah, that's what's coming up with me.
Well, everyone, I think we needed what's said to be said. Thank you for sticking with the deep dive for so long.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying on. That's it. The end of season 1. Holy
Hell
shit,
yeah.
we made it. We made it through the entire season.
Can
God,
I end your season on a really terrible note?
That's fine.
I gotta race like a piss horse right now. So let's pull it in.
All right, everyone. You find me at NoblemanNick on Twitter. Find Jax at RuffleJax.
At RuffleJax.
Follow us.
You can also find me on Linktree with all of my sites at RuffleJax. I'm also going to deposit my Linktree in the comments. And so that I did not totally ruin Nick's stream. Nick, it was absolutely wonderful to be interviewed by you. You gave me such energy and a space that I felt comfortable and safe expressing my opinions and expressing my love and affection and honestly devotion to this game that I'm not sure I would have felt comfortable expressing anywhere else. So I super appreciate you for that. And thank you so much for creating this series where people who are passionate about games can share that passion with other people without being embarrassed.
Aw, I'm gonna push your link tree because it automatically takes it out.
Oh
because
no!
it's a link. So I'm
no!
gonna find it and I'm gonna take it for you and
Okay.
link it so that it won't stop it. But thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Jax, you deserve it. You're
You
amazing.
deserve the world, Nick.
I keep telling myself that, but we have an
It's
amazing.
okay. I keep telling myself that too. We just need other people to tell us that.
We have an
That's
amazing.
why community is so important.
Well, speaking of community, we got an amazing 2021 coming up. Stick with us. We love you guys. That's the end of the deep dive. And
Hell
you
yeah.
have a great fucking day.
Have a much improved 2021.
Oh, I don't even know how that's even possible. Bye, guys. Hey everyone, if you're still watching, yeah, I'm doing one of these. One of the final, like, let's talk about everything. I don't know. It's really been an emotional ride. I'm really glad I did this show. Yeah, it started really way back when where I was like, man, I really just want to do like, we talk about like settings and we talk about systems, but we never like go super deep in talking about everything. And so that's what I wanted the show to do. I wanted a GM to watch the show and be like, damn, I know how to run the themes and do everything for the system. And that's what I sought out to do. And, you know, I feel like somewhere along the way, it got a little bit, it got different and the theme changed, which was really cool for it because it became about how does the game make you feel and how the game relates to real life. And I think that's super important. There's this almost this human quality that we lose while we play in tabletop, and I'm glad we didn't lose it. So to everyone still watching, you're amazing. This hobby saved my life at one point and was a constant like way to escape, and not even escape, just come to cope. And I've met some of the best friends while playing it and hope to expose some of my other best friends. Firstly, the people I want to thank that might not be listening right now are Ian, Mark, Rick, and Dan, and you know what, and Bran as well. Even though he's no longer on our Gehenna team, the guys at Gehenna Gaming were amazing, and they understood whenever like I needed like space or whenever I needed like handling stuff, and it was great, and they were awesome. They brought me on, and doing VHC and like slaving through those 30 days was one of the most fulfilling parts of the year. I want to thank my family who supported me through all the streams, through all the equipment that I had to buy, through everything I had to do for it, and in the hopes that it would pay off one day. And you know, maybe we're not there entirely just yet, but I do feel like I really accomplished something, which is something you don't get to see often. Lastly, I want to thank my girlfriend Bobby for keeping up with my streams and always being on them, even whenever she can watch, whenever she can, and also not being mad when I have to cancel plans to do the stream, because she understands it's something I really care about. And you know, sometimes you can't get that with people, so she's awesome too. So if you're watching out there, Bobby, which I know you are, thank you. And yeah, to all my friends, to the original gaming group that I got started on with Gehenna, Evelyn, Ben, Kay, Ashley, Matt, if you guys are watching, and if you guys are watching, you guys are amazing. To everyone that GM'd on the deep dive, that jumped on, it's great, and I really can't wait to show you what happens next, because it's going to be fucking amazing, and keep with it. Alright guys, you have a great night, have a great 2020. I love you all.